Do not go outside unless you're running for a bomb shelter. Those are the orders of a 35-hour curfew that is now in effect in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. It comes after Russia intensified its bombardment of the city on Tuesday, striking several residential areas before dawn with deadly results.
It's the middle of the night in Kyiv. Those who are awake see the flash first. Then comes the blast. One target, an apartment block. Authorities say several people died in a series of airstrikes on residential high-rises west of the city centre in the early hours of Tuesday. Many have the rescue workers to thank for being alive.
We gathered our belongings and felt the smoke coming. We tried to take the stairs to get out, but the staircase was already filled with smoke. So we made a decision to remain in the apartment.
Our kitchen was burning, but thank God the rescuers found us and they were able to bring us down.
Russia's assault on the capital appears to be inching closer to the heart of the city. A weapons factory in central Kyiv was also hit, but here as elsewhere, civilians bore the brunt of the damage. As the shelling intensified, Kyiv's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, announced a 35-hour curfew extending through Thursday morning. And he warned the capital stood before a difficult and dangerous moment. With the battle for Kyiv edging ever closer, Klitschko appealed to all male residents to fight.
Everyone who loves Kyiv and who wants it to withstand must help as much as he can. Many women and children have left to get to safe places. This is understandable. And many men who took families there are back in the city. I appeal to those who have not yet done so. Men, Kyivites, come back.
But many Kyivites never left, both men and women. Now, some have to pick up the pieces, lucky to be alive, but left with nothing.
Yeah, these are some intense hours in the besieged city of Kyiv. I'm joined now by Rudik, a member of the Ukrainian parliament. It's good to have you on the program. This curfew is now in force. What's the mood like right now where you are? And do you think people have enough supplies to get them through this 35-hour curfew?
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for having me. So we have been preparing for a siege, both civilians and the government in a while. It's actually have been since day one when the Russians want to surround the city and starve us out. So right now, most of civilians do have the food and supplies, or at least were able to prepare. And as for the ones who cannot provide for themselves, the city and myself personally, and there are many teams in Kyiv who are helping out to make sure that each citizen has at least like 3 to 5 days supplies at home, so they wouldn't have to get out for food. And honestly, the coronavirus crisis has taught us a lot, so people have supplies at home. As for the curfew that was implemented, we do understand that it is because Russians would most likely try to attack. And again, we are ready to the ground attack, and people and Kyivans and territorial defense resistance teams, the army, we are training and we are getting ready. We are ready for the siege, and the city is now getting to be a fortress. What we are not ready for is the shelling and the missiles that are coming from the air. There is nothing that you can do as a person to protect yourself from the missiles, from the bombs that are coming. This is what makes me feel helpless, and this is what makes it so hard on us.
Ms. Rudik, let me just ask you about that. The fact that you don't have strong air defenses. With this curfew, do you feel like you've been told to stay indoors and pray that you're not hit by a Russian airstrike tonight?
Well, people are told to go to the bomb shelters if they hear air siren. But yes, the feeling of inability to protect yourself from this most dangerous part from the air, this actually is devastating. And that is why, as a member of Ukrainian parliament, as a leader of the party, I continue pleading to all our NATO partners, to everybody who can hear, to provide us with a no-fly zone or a jet or any Air Force protection, so we will not be sitting just waiting until the bombs will be coming to our heads. If Russians come in, let them come in. We will be fighting them. We will be standing against them. We have been training for that. We will be ready. But if they will be just trying to bombard and get the city to the ground, there will be a very small amount of things that we can do. We can hide in shelters and we can run.
You know that a no-fly zone is not, NATO says it's not going to happen. Even if it were, it wouldn't happen in the next 24, 35 hours that you're having to face this curfew. You have not left Kyiv, and about half of the population of the city has also decided to stay. Why are you still there?
Because this is my city and this is my home. I wouldn't have another one. And my people, my constituency is here, and they are all watching, and they're looking at me, trying to find signs of despair in me, so to use it as a reason to give up. And I'm saying, no, we are not giving up. We are fighting. We are standing here because we will need to protect the city, and we are protecting it. And no matter what happens, we will be ready to give Russians a very, very good fight, the way that we are giving them a fight everywhere in Ukraine where they are attacking. And regarding the no-fly zone, I can tell you, as Ukraine, we do have a plan. Our plan is to fight Russians, and our plan is to win.
Are you planning, Ms. Rudik? What about you? Do you have a machine gun? I mean, are you prepared to actually, if there's urban warfare, are you prepared to fight?
Yes, I do have my machine gun, and I am ready to fight Russians. And I have been training along with my resistance team that I put together, and who is training for the last 20 days. So I am ready to give them a good fight if necessary. And same as myself, there are many people in Kyiv who are standing up to the arms.
Kyiv Rudik, a member of the Ukrainian parliament. Ms. Rudik, you're a very brave woman. We certainly wish you and everyone in Kyiv all the best tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, and glory to Ukraine.
Well, the prime ministers of Poland, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic have arrived in Kyiv by train in what they are calling a show of solidarity from Ukraine's European allies. The Czech Republic's prime minister said that the visit is meant to confirm the support of the entire European Union for the sovereignty and independence of Ukraine. EU officials have voiced concern about this trip and its security risk. They've said that the three leaders are acting on their own and independently. Well, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has signaled that he is ready to accept his country will not join NATO. Ukraine ruling out a future membership of the Western military alliance was one of Vladimir Putin's key demands in the run-up to the invasion.
Ukraine is not a member of NATO. We understand that. We're decent people. We've heard for years that the doors were open, but we also heard that we could not join. That's the truth, and it must be recognized. I'm glad that our people are beginning to understand this and rely on themselves and our partners who are helping us.
Well, that was the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky there. Let's kind of analyze what we just heard. I want to bring in our correspondent, Terry Schultz. She's in Brussels. It's good to see you, Terry. I mean, those words from Zelensky, it's a lot different than what we've been hearing. How significant is this statement for NATO and its strategy towards Russia?
You know, Brent, I think it's more significant for Ukraine itself because As we've been discussing now for a long time, NATO did not intend to admit Ukraine in the very near future, and that's why it was puzzling to everyone why Russian President Vladimir Putin used this as one of the excuses for his invasion. But I think it is recognizing the reality of that for the Ukrainian people that the president was speaking about. As for NATO's strategy, when it is rejecting Moscow's demands that NATO not enlarge to take in even more members, this is not just Ukraine that NATO is talking about. This would also refer to, example, Georgia, which also wants in, and to any other country that wants to join NATO in the future. But I think that this is President Zelensky just readying his citizens one more time for the fact that this is not in the near future for them, if ever.
Earlier this afternoon, the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, he spoke to reporters at NATO headquarters. He talked about the war in Ukraine. I want you to take a listen to part of what he said.
For months, we have exposed Russia's long list of lies. They claimed they did not plan to invade Ukraine, but they did. They claimed they were withdrawing their troops, but they sent in even more. They claim to be protecting civilians, but they are killing civilians. Now, they are making absurd claims about biological labs and chemical weapons in Ukraine. This is just another lie. And we are concerned that Moscow could stage a false flag operation, possibly including chemical weapons.
Now, Terry, you were at that press conference. Analyze for me what we just heard from Stoltenberg.
I think the most striking thing, Brent, is that he used the word lie over and over. I mean, this is things that you hear people use in normal conversation, but it's not the kind of stark language you often hear from diplomats and politicians and heads of international organizations. And I think that was very remarkable today, and especially that last part where Stoltenberg was talking about the fact that Russia has claimed that Ukraine has been manufacturing chemical and biological weapons. This is something we know that the alliance is increasingly concerned about, that Russia may in fact be readying a chemical attack of its own. And that's why you heard Stoltenberg here today, and also in an interview he did with a newspaper over the weekend, raise these concerns because they're continuing this practice of trying to reveal as much of what they think Russia is planning to do as possible so that it doesn't come as a surprise, so that it perhaps serves as some sort of deterrent, which hasn't worked that well. But in any case, we understand both from Stoltenberg's words and from officials that we've been speaking to off the record that this is something that is of increasing concern for them. They're on very high alert for a chemical attack.
And a question about the language that Stoltenberg used today. He said that NATO needs to reset its military posture. What does he mean by that?
You're right to be reading between the lines on this because he mentioned some things very specifically, putting more troops along the eastern flank, more pre-positioned equipment, holding more and larger exercises, reinforcing naval and air defenses as well. So for one thing, these are all the categories that Russian President Vladimir Putin demanded NATO back away from. So they're reminding Putin that everything he's done has just accomplished the opposite of what he wanted. But there's another thing at work here, Brent, and that is that there is an agreement between NATO and Russia that NATO would not permanently station troops on the eastern flank that could be seen as a threat to Russia. The fact that they're talking about now in the long term resetting this posture means that they may consider this agreement, the NATO-Russia Founding Act, out the window because of what Russia has done. So we'll be watching for that in the future as well.
All right, DW's Terry Schultz with the latest tonight from Brussels. Terry, as always, thank you. And here's a look now at more developments in this war. The European Union has launched a fourth round of sanctions against Russia. They ban investments in the Russian energy sector, and they also bar luxury goods exports to Russia and steel imports from the country. 2 Fox News journalists have been killed after their vehicle came under fire outside of Kyiv. The same attack also left a network correspondent wounded. And Russia has banned U.S. President Joe Biden and other top American officials from entering the country. Moscow saying the move is in response to U.S. sanctions.